Good morning. Welcome to this service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Celeste Rogers, and I will be your worship associate this morning. Our settled minister, Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, is away on sabbatical this summer and will return to the pulpit on September 3rd. Our guest speaker this morning is Reverend Bob Klein. Reverend Klein is a retired UU minister who served as minister of First Unitarian Universalist Church of Stockton, California from 2013 through 2022. He previously served as settled minister of UU congregations in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Rancho Palos Verdes, California. He also served as a consulting minister in Bakersfield, California, and Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Prior to that, he worked in Child Protective Services and as a United Methodist minister. He's a Cubs and Bears fan from the Chicago area. Please give Reverend Klein a warm UUCT welcome. If you haven't been watching, a number of announcements were running on our screen earlier, and I invite you to check out the UUCT website and our weekly e-blast for more announcements. I do have one announcement that was given to me. Tomorrow evening at the Berger Performing Arts Center, author and storyteller Stephen Jenkinson joins singer-songwriter Gregory Hoskins for a night of grief and mystery, an evening for reckoning with the mystery of being human. Ask Barbara, who's over here, for more details after the service, and you will see some flyers on the tables in the back. Because of the progress our country has made in fighting the virus, we no longer require that masks be worn in worship or concurrent religious education. You, of course, are still welcome to wear a mask, but it is no longer required. If you are feeling sick, we encourage you to wear a mask or join us from home. Based on our last poll, UUCT members are committed to being fully vaccinated and boosted. For all of our sakes, especially those most vulnerable, please let's maintain that commitment. I extend a special welcome to visitors and invite you to fill out a guest information card, which I hope will be posted in the YouTube chat. If not, there are also cookboards with yellow paper that you can fill out here with us in person in the Welcome Center in the back corner of this room where Beth Britton is sitting. If you need to use the bathroom, the facilities you are familiar with in Holland are still accessible through the back door. And we also have 2 bathrooms here through the door to your left and down the hallway. And the first left off of that. This month, we have been exploring the theme of rest. And we've had some fascinating things to think about in the past few weeks. Today, Reverend Klein will continue this theme with his sermon on rest in retirement. In a minute, when I say go, I'd like you to turn to your neighbor, preferably someone you didn't have breakfast with. Be sure to introduce yourself. If you are watching us online, I welcome you to light up the chat. I'd like you to share for a moment something about what retirement means to you. If you are retired, perhaps talk about how retirement has changed your life, some of the things you enjoy doing now that you have more time. Are you resting now more, or are you busier than ever? If you are not yet retired, what are some of your expectations about retirement? What are some of the things you look forward to doing? Okay, ready, set, go. draw your conversations to a close. We hope these conversations will continue after the service during social hour, which will be right here in Goddard. There will be iced tea, coffee, lemonade, and some snacks, and of course, good company. When our service ends, we'd appreciate those who are able to help us to set up more chairs around the tables in the back of the room. As we prepare to enter the sacred space of worship, let us remember that our community strives to become as welcoming and as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert, so that we may better reflect the wonderful diversity with which Southern Arizona is blessed. However you participate in this service, whether here in person or from afar, we welcome you. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, and whoever you are becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self here now. Whomever you love, however you identify your gender, and however you choose to express it, we welcome you.
Thank you for that beautiful music. I was actually meaning to get here sooner. When I moved down to this area, I was intending to sort of split my time between visiting you and visiting Mountain Vista, but I got there first and I kind of got stuck. But anyway, it's good to be here. I hadn't been on site here since you hosted a district annual meeting back when those existed, back in the late 90s or early aughts. So I sort of knew where you were. It was harder to find Mountain Vista, but once I found it, they were closer. So sorry about that. Anyway, the call to worship, I'm going to use words from Thich Nhat Hanh that are in the back of the hymnal, number 505. I invite you to be in an attitude of worship. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen.
Will everyone please join me in our chalice lighting words by Katie Savani Gelfand. The end is the beginning. We call for the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. This spark of new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we have been and where we are going. Even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual extinguishing, we fear not its end, for we know with brave hearts that from every ending of our lives, we are sent forth to make a new beginning. If you have a chalice or candle at home, please light it now as we light our chalice here in Goddard.
Now will you rise in body or spirit and join in singing the ceaseless flow of endless time. The words will be projected on the screen in front, and if you ever want, there are always hymnals at the back of the door if you ever would like to hold a hymnal in hand.
We're hanging in there.
It's all good.
The mountain where old people were abandoned. A tale from Japan, collected by Dan Keating. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a king who commanded that when people reach old age, they should be taken to a mountain canyon and left there to die. He thought that once they became too old to work in the fields or ply their trade, they were no longer useful. In a nearby village, there was a young farmer whose father had now reached the age of abandonment. And since the king had commanded it, the son now took his father on his back to the mountain to be left there to die. They walked deeper and deeper into the wilderness, and as they went along, the old man broke the tips of branches in order to mark the trail. "Father, why do you break the branches off? Is it to mark the trail to find your way home again?" "No, my son," the father replied. "It is not for me that I mark the trail, but for you. I know that I cannot return, but I am afraid that you will become lost on your way home, and I would be grief-stricken if anything happened to you on my account." When the young farmer heard these words, he thought back on how kind and wise his father had always been, and how he had tried his best throughout the years to guide his son along life's journey. Stopping for a moment, the son shifted his father's weight on his back and turned around and walked back home. By day, he hid his father under the porch, and at night he brought the man into the house and fed and cared for him. Now, the king of that land was a man of whims who would often taunt his subjects by asking them to undertake challenges and sometimes ridiculous tasks. One day, he gathered the farmers from the region and said, "You must each bring me a rope woven from ashes." All the farmers were very troubled, knowing the impossibility of the request. The young farmer went home and told his father of the king's command as they ate their evening meal. "A rope of ash is what he wants. How can I do this?" "You must weave a rope very tightly," father said, "then burn it and bring it carefully to the king." The young man was amazed and overjoyed at his father's advice and quickly went about his task. The next day, he was the only one who brought ash and rope to the king. The king was pleased and praised the young man for his quick thinking. Next, the king commanded, "Each of you must bring a conch shell with a thread passed through it." Once again, the young farmer sought out his father's wisdom. The old man smiled and said, "Take a conch shell and point the tip to the light. Take a thread and stick a grain of rice on it. Then give the rice to an ant and make it crawl into the shell. The ant will make its way toward the light and weave the thread throughout the chambers of the shell." Once more, the young farmer was the only one able to complete the task, and again the king was pleased. "How were you able to come up with a way to solve the riddles of these tasks and complete them so well?" he demanded. The young farmer took a deep breath and answered the king, "I love my father very much, and when it came time to take him to the mountain canyon to die, I could not bear it. He was always so wise and kind. Instead, I brought him back to my house and hid him there by day and fed and cared for him at night. I asked him about these problems, and he quickly solved them both." When the king heard this, he was impressed with the young man's devotion and the old man's wisdom. He knew now that it was a mistake to lose all that knowledge, so he commanded that the practice of abandonment cease and that old people should be revered and honored, even as they were allowed to rest and to be cared for. And so it was, and so it should be.
I knew Jamili would come up with a good story. She's down in Sky Island preaching this morning. Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. Like many of you probably, I woke up this morning to the disappointment that the winds did not bring rain with them. Just some destruction in the neighborhood, a tree I saw uprooted. But the threat of climate change cannot be ignored. I read this morning that 110 million people, or a third of the country, are currently under the threat of extreme heat, as we are here in Tucson. Yesterday up in Phoenix, they broke the daily record of 117, and so yesterday it was 118. And the last time it was that hot was in 1998, the day Linda and I moved into our home in Phoenix, which I will never forget. Let us remember those desert people who came here first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, the Tohono, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Yep, sorry, I need your help. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or a sorrow to share, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 14582. If any of you here in the sanctuary wish to put your thoughts up on Menti, Brian Moon is here and can help you do that. If you are here in person, I invite you to come up to the table and create ripples of hope by putting a stone into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. To best utilize this space, we ask that those of you who come up form a line and come down the middle aisle and then return to your seat utilizing the outside aisles. Joys and sorrows unspoken. On our Menti today, grateful for being with you today. Thank you. Gratitude to TEP's transformer team who came out to Vail this morning to repair my electricity after working in town all night. Power up. Amen. Joy of seeing my grandchild. Joy of seeing you all at church. Joy of a new dog. Praying for healing in our household. Yes. Estrangement from our daughter going on 2 years. That's so hard. Hoping for health and wellness for myself, my family, friends, and church family. Holding my daughter Adrienne in my thoughts for the healing she needs. The joy of waking up each morning with each other. finding comfort in unexpected places as I grieve the death of a loved one. Let's take a moment of silence.
As a community, we honor the joys and sorrows, the pieces of life that bring us together. And we give thanks. There is a reading, the back of the hymnal, written by Eugene Pickett, who I believe was a former president of the UUA. And I invite you to read responsively. Most of the responses are, "We give thanks this day," with the one part is a little longer for you, but I'll read the rest. We give thanks this day for the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations.
We give thanks this day.
For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons.
We give thanks this day.
For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements.
We give thanks this day.
For our human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression.
We give thanks this day.
For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared.
We give thanks this day.
For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, and who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom.
We give thanks this day.
For human liberty and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. We give thanks this day. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds.
Please respond in song. How could anyone? How could anyone ever tell you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply we're connected to my soul. How could
One Sunday each month is designated as Share the Plate Sunday, on which we will give half of the non-pledge collection to a community organization whose mission we support. Generosity is a spiritual practice, and Share the Plate is an expression of our mission. Interfaith Community Services, or ICS, is our Share the Plate recipient this month. Phil Lynn, a representative from ICS, will come up now to give us some information about ICS and how you can help.
Thank you, Celeste, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've met some of you, walked around, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here and to share the plate. I just wanted to share with you, ICS, Interfaith Community Services, started almost 40 years ago, back in 1985, with 6 faith communities with the passion, exactly what you said. We said if we could come together with our differences, I think we can help people in our community with needs better than alone. And I just wanted to share with you just a few numbers so you can get the impact of what our partnership has done in fiscal year 2022. Together, we were able to serve over 55,000 individuals. Wow. That's a lot of people. It's incredible, and it's us doing it together. It's not just ICS, but it's us doing it together. About 4,500 clients received emergency financial assistance, and I want to tell you a little story about that. 2.9 million pounds of food were distributed through our food bank, and now we have a mobile food bank where we're actually able to go to the communities that need it the most. It used to be we have a brick and mortar food bank, and people in need would need to get on the city bus, come to us, get their grocery bag, and go back. And now, because of your contributions, we were able to purchase a mobile food bank, a truck with refrigeration. I mean, it's like a grocery store in Wills. And we're able to go to them. Over 1,200 clients are living more independent because of our partnership. But you know, those numbers can be meaningless without a story. I would love to read to you a story of a gentleman who gave us permission, to my understanding. He wrote us a letter. It's really touched my heart. And this is what it's about. It's not just saying, okay, we helped 55,000 people, but this is the story of what our partnership is all about. My name is Martin, and I'm writing this letter on behalf of the services of my family and I received from Interfaith Community Services. I'm a single father of 4 amazing boys, 18, 15, 13, and 8 years old. So if you can imagine, we're talking a large family. In August of 2021, my wife and the mother of my sons decided she wanted a divorce and left our household, leaving me with our 4 sons. As you can imagine, we've been through a lot because of the unusual circumstances. The struggles we have faced and continue to endure have been very difficult. The only source of income in the beginning and now continues to be the one from my employer. There came a time where we could have lost our home. So if you can imagine, here's a family of 5 being homeless, okay? And a lot of other things because of the financial hardship. We were multiple months behind on all of our bills, especially the mortgage. There seemed to be no end to the pink notices and delinquent phone calls. Everything kept piling up, so if you can imagine. Just when you think, how could it get any worse? And then the next thing you know it does. My main concern has always been about the boys and everything they were going through day after day. We kept on believing and praying that our entire situation would turn around for the good. We needed hope. One day while I was at my local bank, someone I knew recommended that I contact ICS, Interfaith Community Services, where help brings hope. He told me to give them a call to see if they could help us out in any way. I gave them a call, and that's when I met Cynthia Gallus, and she happens to be our social services director, if you don't know her, for the first time. After explaining our situation to Cynthia, we went through their intake process and submitted all required documents to see if they could help us. From start to finish, Cynthia and all her staff were always very professional, fast, helpful, caring, and amazing individuals. I cannot begin to explain to you how much they have done for each of us. Yes, they were able to bring us current on all of our utilities, mortgages, and then some. So if you can imagine stopping the cycle of poverty because those children weren't put out on the street, you were able to do that. We were able to do that together. It's not just about the financial assistance they were able to provide. It was much more and deeper than that. It was knowing that they were there for us, they truly cared about us and our circumstances. It was about the hope they gave us. I do not know how many people or families Interfaith Community Services has provided assistance for, but I do know what they did for my family and for me, for the 5 of us. They changed our lives. Without them, I cannot imagine what we would have done or what we might have lost, and to be honest with you, I do not want to know. It was no coincidence running into my friend that day at the bank and then talking to Cynthia. Neither is the fact that you're reading this letter that I wrote a coincidence. We all share a special place in common. ICS Interfaith Community Services, where help brings hope. So I just wanted to say again, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for the partnership. You've been a partner with us since 2009. I think that was before I was born. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, just give or take a few years. You've been a partner with us for quite some time, and I just want to say thank you, and for all of the financial and all the support that you provide for us. I will be back at the table if you have any questions, any flyers. I'd love to meet with you just afterwards. And again, thank you. What you do literally is changing lives and, in one sense, ending the cycle of poverty. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil. Half of the amount of all checks made out to UUCT that have Share the Plate written in the memo line, as well as half of all the cash donations today, will go to ICS. If Share the Plate is not written in your checks memo line, it will be not included. If you are joining us virtually, you can send a check to the church office with Share the Plate in the memo, or give online at uuctucson.org/donate. If you give online, be sure to indicate that your donation is for Share the Plate. This church is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. Again, if you are joining us on live stream, you can send a check to the office or give online or text 833-361-5796. If you are here in person, the ushers will come around now with the offering baskets to collect your donations. Please give generously. Thank you.
grown to love Walt Whitman's writings over the years. He has some gaps and issues, as all of us do, but some of his words just catch. What I thought my retirement was going to be like kind of fits this reading, Song of the Open Road. It's number 645 in the back of the hymnal. I think it's going to show up with parts for you to read, and you know your part. Afoot and light-hearted, I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me.
Henceforth I ask not good fortune, I myself am good fortune. Strong and content, I travel the open road.
I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine.
All seems beautiful to me. I can reveal the words to men and women who have done such good to me. I would do the same to you.
Whoever you are, come travel with me. However sweet these laid-up stores, however convenient this dwelling, we cannot remain here.
However sheltered this fort, and however long these waters, we must not anchor here.
Together the inducements shall be greater. We will sail pathless and wild seas.
We will go where winds blow, waves dash, and the Yankee clipper speeds by under full sail.
Forward, after the great companions, and to belong to them, they too are on the road.
Onward to that which is endless, as it was beginningless, to undergo much, tramps of days, rests of nights.
To see nothing anywhere but what you may reach it and pass it. To look up or down, no road, but it stretches and waits for you.
To know the universe itself as a road, as many roads, as roads for traveling souls.
For the first 60 years or so of my life, I didn't really give retirement much of a thought. My dad retired at 70 and died of a massive heart attack about a year later. My mom was forced to retire by health and circumstances after her second hip replacement on the same side, and died several years ago at 82. My brother, who is much older than me, almost 2 years, has no plan for retiring, but he can pretty much cut back on his law practice at any time. 2 of his 3 kids and all 5 of his granddaughters are within walking distance of his house, and his office is in the next suburb. I made an effort to slow down after being diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and now I have some related kidney issues. I accepted the call to serve a smaller church in Stockton, California in 2013. I began thinking about retirement after about 5 years in Stockton and was aiming for retiring this year. When COVID hit, we closed the church and went online for over a year, finally reopening in the spring of 2021, while also continuing to Zoom and post recordings on YouTube. After a year of online church and another year of mixed church, I was exhausted. 40 years after I graduated from seminary, including several years of United Methodist ministry, 6.5 years of child protective social work for 2 different states, and about 28 years of UU ministry, I retired June 30th of 2022. By the time I retired, I was hoping that retirement would afford me significant time for rest, as well as the opportunity to frequently see my kids and grandkids. Until a couple of years ago, I had not really considered Southern Arizona for retirement, But my son and his family live in Hereford, just south of Sierra Vista. My daughter and her family live in Phoenix. My other daughter and her family are still in California, in the Long Beach area, so I'm only a little further from them here. As a native Cubs and Bears fan, I had to, albeit briefly, consider returning to the Chicago area. But I really did not relish the idea of shoveling or driving in snow. After 3 stints, totaling about 18 years in California, my values and politics more nearly align with that state than with this one. But along with the matter of proximity to my 5 grandkids, it is more affordable here than in California. Other than slowing down, seeing kids and grandkids, and not being bound by the expectations of a congregation or any other workplace, I didn't have much of a plan for retirement. If you're familiar with the Jungian Myers-Briggs personality scale, I'm an ex-NFP, about even on introversion and extroversion, intuitive, feeling, perceiving, or more of a go-with-the-flow process person who weighs feelings and intuition more highly than hard, cold facts. All that is to say that I decided last year that that was the time and that Tucson was the place to retire. My little house up in Marana is working out fairly well, although I'm in a power outage that hit my air conditioning last night. They'll be out tomorrow to fix it. I'm a little worried about my dog, but I think she'll be okay till I get home. The addition of a pool and a shed for storage and model railroading helped. My somewhat vague plan, with no specifics added, is to be able to travel with Tucson as my home base. I did just get back from the East Coast a couple days ago, and that was nice, although that steamy heat really is worse than the dry heat. I do hope that the pool will frequently attract my kids and grandkids. But enough about me. How do rest and retirement connect for you? Now, you had a chance to share with others a few minutes ago, so some questions for you. First, how many of you are retired? A lot of us are. How many of you who are not retired expect retirement to be restful? Hopes, dreams, yeah, whatever. How many of you who are retired find your retirement to be a restful experience? A few. Good for you. Good for you. If you are retired, were you surprised by how busy you are? Yeah. As UUs, many of us enjoy the privilege of expecting and experiencing retirement. How might life be different for others in our society? It seems to me, after many years of observation, that other than adding more or longer naps, retirement for most UUs is really not that restful. Though many of us have entered retirement, it is rarely with the goal of slowing down. Many UUs do add more time for reading or meditation. Those are good things. But recent retirees are often a target for leadership recruitment committees. Do these words sound familiar? Now that you're retired, would you have a little extra time to help with something? I suppose it shouldn't be surprising, since we have no culture of just respecting wise elders in this society. Think of that story. But wouldn't it be nice to have time to think about and choose what we would and would not like to be doing in our elder years? Now, it is true that for many of us, retirement does offer us time. if not always energy or health, to continue and even expand volunteer efforts. It's also true that many of us like to be invited to participate in projects and activities, but there are also those who do not like to be asked. How much might we volunteer if we weren't asked to do something else? I like the idea of having time to cogitate or meditate or read. I like being free from deadlines. I like the idea of spending more time making music, taking pictures, or model railroading. Somehow things keep coming up to keep me busy, and I don't get to what I intended, even if I still remember what I was going into a room to do. Short of resting in peace, retirement ought to be the opportunity to rest up after a lifetime of business and/or busyness. We know from numerous studies that humans need time to rest, to sleep, to dream. Our culture has come to value business and busyness and the acquisition of wealth and power far more highly than creativity, learning, or compassion, or rest. In religious institutions, this is often expressed through the prioritization of growth over deeper community. The early Unitarians were quite opposed to evangelism, believing that people would find the Unitarian Church when they were ready. Today, within UUism, there is more appreciation of the need for rest and more acceptance of those who retire generally, but not necessarily when volunteer jobs need to be filled. And now the rest of the story. Of the monthly themes from the Baja 4 lectionary, rest was the only one that didn't appear among the 70 or 80 thematic categories that I have used to categorize my sermons, kept digitally, but written since the mid-1990s. I'm sure I could have found a few things in the 1,000 or so sermons if I looked hard enough, and I did address retirement a number of times in my last year or two in Stockton, but rest as a theme surprised me. Meditation and contemplation, even music and spirituality, learning and creativity are quite acceptable to Methodists as well as Unitarian Universalists, as is working for justice in any number of ways. But within that Protestant work ethic, rest is not often mentioned. Rest, as important as it is, might be assumed, but it is not that often discussed or sermonized about. I took the theme of rest as a challenge, one with which I have struggled greatly. I suppose I could have gone off to discuss dreams, a matter with which I am far more interested ever since studying with UU community minister and dream worker Jeremy Taylor back in 1989 and 90. I decided to address the connection between rest and retirement because that is my recent reality. As a retiree, I no longer work, but rather I engage in retirement activities. Though I haven't engaged in a single game of shuffleboard, nor for that matter golf, tennis, or pickleball since retiring, there is a fairly clear line of demarcation between our working lives and retirement. At least in theory, I am now free to rest or play whenever and for as long as I choose. In theory, I'm free to walk the dog whenever I choose, though Arizona temperatures do tend to influence that matter significantly, at least during the summer. During my work life, and perhaps yours, rest time was often used mainly to recharge and restore energy to prepare for the next day of work. Days off and weekends, for those who get them, afford some opportunities for non-work recreational activities, but often also are used to recharge before the next work week. Our lives, particularly in this culture, are organized and driven by work. Rest, as important, as necessary as it is, often is an afterthought, leaving us to fall exhausted into bed at the end of the day. I've often heard comments from those particularly driven that they will rest either when they retire or Yep. I don't think that I was that driven, but my work days often covered more than 8 hours, a lot more when I was leading youth retreats and camps. I am convinced that rest and retirement go together, but I think now that it will take me a few more months and maybe years of retirement to fully experience the connection. I am doing more free-range reading, books that I don't expect to turn into sermons, even light novels. I also feel free to watch as many Cubs and Bears and Northern Illinois University football games as I can find or afford to pay for. I must admit that I often find myself further into the games than I expect after closing my eyes to rest just for a moment. I also feel freer to sleep on a decision for one or several nights than I did during my working years when everything had to be decided immediately. So far, I am enjoying not serving on any boards or committees, but connecting with colleagues as a mostly irrelevant, but sometimes irreverent old guy. I no longer carry the stress of the churches and boards I served, though I still worry about my kids and grandkids. I am getting more restful sleep these days. I didn't realize how much of a life-changing experience retirement could be until I did it. I know that there are far too many people in our society who will never be able to afford to enjoy retirement, but I am enjoying it, as many of us UUs are or will be able to do. As Facebook sometimes reminds me, we aren't really entitled to anything from anyone in this life. I do hope that the impacts of human-caused climate change can be mitigated and that the earth will remain habitable. I hope that Social Security and Medicare will not be eliminated by wealthy politicians, both for my own benefit and for all those others who have paid into those programs for decades, unless it be to replace them with more equitable programs for all those living in these United States. I wish for all persons the opportunity to rest and to retire when they have reached their elder years. As youth and energy allows, I wish for each of us to do what we can to shape a better world for ourselves, for our families, for all people and animals and all that lives. So may it be. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen.
Would you rise in body or spirit for the earth forever turning? For the earth forever turning, for the skies in every sea, for our lives, for all we cherish, sing we our joyful song of peace.
Please join me in our chalice extinguishing words, number 685 in the hymn book by T.S. Eliot. What we call a beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time.